Okay, we're on the second line down, Yud Ches Amud Aleph. So we're discussing that if a guy, the Mishnah had said that what was it? Was it a Mishnah? Yeah, it was a Mishnah. No, no, it was not a Mishnah. So he said if you find a star that from a Maisa Bezdin, the Gemara had said, if you find a star from Maisa Bezdin, like how much money a guy has to give for the ksuba, meaning standard things that Bezdin enforces, so then even if the guy he meaning if once it's a star from Bezdin, then he's whatever he says doesn't count, and you give it back to whoever it is, meaning you give it back to the wife, right? Because it's as if she's holding the star. If it's a Maisa Bezdin, who's holding the star. So Abaya, and we said we know this also from the case of the Mishnah of somebody, if the woman brings a get and she has the get and she doesn't have a ksuba, she can still collect the ksuba based on the get. Normally, a ksuba is basically just a contract that the husband's going to owe her money. So now she doesn't have a ksuba, so how could she collect the money? So we say a get represents that. Right? And that's because it's a Maisa Bezdin. So Abaya didn't like that. He said it's not necessarily the same case. But then we said Abaya says no, it is the same case. All right, so that's what we're holding. We're trying to figure out reasons why it's the same case. So the second line down. Ve'elo midatani Reb Chia bar Ami. This is what Reb Chia bar Ami said. Ishtoi arusa. If a man is a man's arusa dies, meaning he's engaged. What we call engaged, but meaning they're married, they had kiddushin, and then she dies. So what's his status? Because officially they're married. If she's mezana, she's chayiv. So what's the story? Are they married? They're not married. So Gemara says loy oinen. He's not an oinen, but loy metamala, and he doesn't. If he's a kohen, he cannot become tummy to her. V'chein he loy oinenes, and the same thing. If he dies, she doesn't become oinenes, but loy metamala, and she doesn't become tummy for him. Right, but we know that a woman could become tummy. Right. So what we say that it's she doesn't have to become tummy if she doesn't want to. Meaning, a regular standard kohen, you have to become tummy, and she doesn't have to if she doesn't want to. That's what it means. Mesa, if she dies, ain't a yarsha. He does not yarshin her because he's not married to her yet. Mesu goiva ksubasa, and if he dies, she collects the ksuba. So you see that sort of they're in no man's land as it pertains to the relationship. Right? But the Mishnah says that if he dies, she collects the ksuba. So you see that from Erison, when a woman is in what we call engaged, she gets the ksuba, even though there's no actual ksuba. Right? So Mamela, that's what Abai is saying, because Abai had wanted to say that maybe the Mishnah that I should have said this before, but maybe the Mishnah that says that a woman collects her if she just has a get, she collects it. Abaya wanted to say that that's talking about in a town where they don't write ksubas. There were towns that had the meaning not to write ksubas, and then Abaya is saying no, it's even in a town that they do write the ksubas. So then one is saying a raya from here. Mesu, she collects her ksuba, seemingly even if there is no ksuba. So the Gemara answers, and the Gemara asks, well, maybe Abaya's raya is not a raya. Deal with the kosav. Maybe it's talking about where he did write her a ksuba. The kosav. So if he wrote her a ksuba, then what's the chiddush? If he wrote her a ksuba and then he died of others, she gets the ksuba. May say in a yarsha. No, the chiddush would be that if she dies, he doesn't yarshin him. Meaning, even though there was a ksuba, still the chiddush is that he dies. If she dies, then he doesn't yarshin him. So again, we don't have a raya from that Gemara that a woman gets her ksuba from kiddushin, even if there's no ksuba. Abaya changed his mind. Again, he's changing his mind from saying that Mishnah is talking about in a town that did not have ksubas, and he's saying that no, even if it's a town that had a ksuba, she still collects it. How do we know it? He goes it from the goof of the Mishnah. Because if you're going to think that it's in a place that we don't write the ksuba, the get hainu ksubasa because the get is a ksuba, or to get mano masayim ksibe. Does the get say how much money she's receiving? Meaning, if she were to receive, if she's a basula, she gets 100. If she's 200. If she's an almana or a grusha, she gets 100. Doesn't say that in the get, right? So how you go collecting whatever amounts it is if it doesn't even say it in the get? The chitem, and if you're going to say, you still could collect the 100 or 200. Even the tkinu rabbanon lemigva since the chacham were masakin that she could collect her ksuba command of sibbe dami. It's as if it's written in the get that if she's a psula, it's 200, and if she's an almana, it's 100. So litoin, the lema parati, let him say, then let the husband say, I paid. Right? The chitem, meaning if all there is a get, so let the husband say, yeah, you have a get, we did the divorce, then I paid you the ksuba. Chitem adamrina lay, and if you're going to say that we tell him, so tell the husband, buddy, you paid up the ksuba here. So then why didn't you tear up the get? Whoever pays up the amount of money ksuba and doesn't tear up the get? Amarlan, so he'll tell us.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
How should he tear up the get? The get's hers.
Well, he should have it torn up in Bezdin.
That's her proof that she can get remarried.
Right. Well, that's going to be the Gemara's time. That's what the Gemara is going to say.
What's the Havamina?
I don't know if there. I don't know what the Havamina is. Right. Well, there's going to be epis. Let's see the Gemara. So again, Iparati, so maybe we tell the husband if he paid up the ksuba, then he should have destroyed the get. So Amarlan, like Shavakta, you're not going to let me, or she didn't let me. I need to get to prove that I'm divorced so that I can get remarried. And if you're going to say that, we'll tell him, you should have torn up the get, and write on the back of it, get the dinan, this get the karunu that was torn, to get the psuluhu. The reason why it was torn is not because it's a get puzzle. So that we're just ripping it up so that she doesn't go ask me for a second time to pay her. So if you're going to say that, to call them going, does anybody who pay up his ksuba pay it up in Bezdin? Meaning maybe he just paid her not in Bezdin, and he didn't know there was such a concept of tearing up the get and letting her have it, but writing on the back that it's only torn up because he already paid. All right. So
there's no receipt in place. We're not talking about two people that get along. We're two people that got divorced. So you got to go give a ksuba. You wouldn't ask for a receipt or something in place.
Why was there no receipt here?
Yeah. Why? What's the normal process that she need? I understand she needs a get for divorce, but if she has the receipt from the ksuba, then you don't need. I'm not saying shouldn't there be a step process?
There was no ksuba.
We never expect them to keep a shaver. A shaver is a receipt. We don't expect them to keep a shaver because that could get lost.
No, but the normal process is with a ksuba. She has a ksuba. She uses the ksuba to demand her monomasayim, and to sefis ksuba. And then when he gives it to her, she gives him the ksuba. Right. So she can, anytime she goes without a ksuba to claim her money, he says, I paid it. Show me your ksuba. She can't, so she doesn't get it. That's the normal process. Here it's from Erison where there is no ksuba.
Right.
So the whole shaila of the Gemara is whether a get is considered the ksuba or not. The shtar.
Right. The only option that she has is to show the get. No, but Avtali's asking good. So after he pays the get, so then give her a receipt.
Yeah, but that's the point of this Gemara. It's not a normal situation.
I mean, it wasn't relatively normal. People to die
during Erison.
Yeah.
I doubt it. You see how stark Hasidim are with Tanaim. This is Erison.
No, but I'm saying that's one. When he dies, he dies.
This is with a get. This is not dying.
What's either? Well,
I don't know why the Gemara doesn't handle dying. That would be worse because there's not even a get there for her to claim with.
Yeah. Well, the previous brisa was referring to debt. The Mishnah
brought both.
Mishnah.
The Maisa, what's giving a ksuba under the chuppah that the Masada Kiddushin is involved with? Is that part of Kiddushin, or is that just a prep for the Nisuin?
I thought it's just a prep for the Nisuin. But I don't know. I don't know for sure.
That would be Toila and Biskamar.
Yeah. Anyway, so now Mamela, this is the proof from Abaya. And he says in the Mishnah that a person is never believed that he paid if it comes from Bezdin. Something that comes from Bezdin, like a ksuba, the guy is never believed. Finished. Okay. Next Mishnah. Motza gite noshim v'shafurei avadim. So let's say a guy finds a get, or a get, shafurei avadim is when an eved gets lost, not lost, whatever, he gets freed, and he lost his get. The atiki is a will, but it's not a will because wills are not really part of the Torah. Right? The Torah has a order of Yerusha. Wills is not really a Torah-dik thing. That's where you get into the whole, wills and how to write the will properly. Basically, what it means in Daitiki is a will that gives over his belongings to his relatives right before he dies. Right? Matana, or a gift, Peshoivrin, or receipts. And if you find any of these things, don't give it back. Right? Don't, meaning whoever's named in them, don't give it to them. Shani Yomer Ksubin Hayu, because I'm going to say, what the assumption is that we're going to say that these shtaris were written, and they changed their mind not to give them. Meaning, the reason why, meaning if somebody has documents that are worth something to him, he doesn't usually lose those documents. That's not what you do. Right? You watch them properly.
People never lose things by accident? I'm saying people never lose them?
They do, but we're assuming that if it got lost, it must be because it didn't have legitimacy to it. I can't say I understand this. I can't say I understand because why? I mean, it's a 50-50 chance. I don't know, maybe it's less, maybe it's more. Why should we assume that that it was a legitimate shtar, but the guy never implemented it? Right? So, but anyway, that's the assumption. All these shtaras we're assuming were written and they never did anything with it, and therefore don't give them back. Don't give them to whoever's in it, whoever's named in it, because you give it to the guy who's named in it, he's going to go illegally collect from it. Yeah. So the Gemara says, "Time at the nimlach shaloi litman." The reason is because he changed his mind. Nimlach means change his mind. Shaloi litman, not to give it. Ha'amar telu. But it's mashma that, let's say the guy who owes the money, right, or let's say the husband, or the owner of the eved, or the guy dying, or the guy giving the present says, no, give it to him. Right? You found the shtar, give it to them. Noisnin, you give it, but filul is man meruba. Even if you found the shtar a lot later than the date that was written in the shtar, you still give it to them. Right? Meaning, why wouldn't you? So Rashi says, because maybe you would think that it's somebody else's documents with the same names and same information. So Kamash Malon, that if the guy admits that it should go to them, so then it goes to them. So I'm going to answer, maybe get but we have a Gemara in Mishnah Gittin that says somebody brings a get and it got lost from him, meaning a shliach brought a get and then he lost it. Matzu la'alter kosher. If they find it right away, it's kosher. Right? What does right away mean? With enough time that the next bus leaves and comes back. Meaning it's talking about sheyaras, where they had what do you call sheyara?
Caravans.
Caravans, thank you.
Not
yes,
good.
Right, so the caravan, the la'alter means you found it before the next caravan came back. Because the more caravans that come, the more chances are that there's names that you're going to have a duplicate shtar with the same people's names. So again, is saying, maybe get Bava, if somebody brings a get and it gets lost from him, Matzula Alta kosher. If it gets found right away, it's kosher. Im lav, but if you don't find it right away, it's puzzle. That's a stira, because our Mishnah seems to be saying that if the guy admits that the shtar is legitimate, so then give it to the person who's named in the shtar, right? And it sounds like even if it's been a long time since they found the shtar, meaning the date when the shtar was a year ago, let's call it, and you found it today, you'd still give it to him. But we see, but in Hamevi get, that if a get gets lost from the shliach, so it has to be found right away, and if not, it's puzzled. So it's a stira. Samar Rabba like kasha is no kasha. Kamba makom sheyaras mitzuyas. Kamba makom shen sheyaras mitzuyas. One is talking about where there are caravans coming and going, right? So since this caravan is coming and going, then it's very possible that there could be a get with the same name of a husband and the same name of a wife, and therefore this is not the legitimate get. But if there's no shiyaris mitzuyas, and then right, then there's no. It's a small town. There's nobody coming. There's nobody going, and you find this a get with his name and her name. So then the assumption would be that this is a legitimate get. So that's how we're answering the stira. And then the Gemara says, it adds a little wrinkle to it. And even if it's in a place that the caravans are going back and forth, and therefore we say we're chayshed that the get is not a good get, you have to have a chazaka that within this city there are two Yosef and Shimon's. Why they choose those names, I don't know. It's just a mashal for it two, and it has to also be, her name has to be the same, and the city has to be the same. I mean, we're afraid we have to know that there's double shtar. Meaning, we have to know that it exists in the town a guy by this name, by this exact name, right? So again, because we don't say this, it's a stira in Rabbah. So
it must be a minhag somewhere never to name if your name is Shimon, never to have a son named Yosef. From this Gemara, there's never. Because in case they ever find a get Yosef and Shimon, maybe whatever. I'm just thinking, why would it use these two names? Who knows?
Achmim, that would be a stira to the other Gemara. Kama Yosef B'Shuka.
Very good. Yeah. So anyway, so what the Gemara is saying is that you need two qualifications in order for this for us to be chayshed that this get is not a good get, meaning it's a double get. You need to have two things. It needs to be that this shayar is coming back and forth, right? And it has to be that you know that there's a guy and a girl in town, meaning there's two sets of guys and girls with the same name. If you're missing one or the other, then you could assume that the get is kosher, and you give it back to the woman. Right? So again, we have to make sure we have this clear. There's going to be two other shitas on our base. According to Rava, in order to not give the get back, there needs to be two things. You need to have shiyaras mitzuyas, meaning caravans going back and forth, meaning like let's say it was lost in Grand Central Station. As people coming and going, there can be any sort of it can be a total duplicate get, and you have to know that within that town there's two sets of guys with Yosef and Shimon, and two sets of girls. The Gemara doesn't bother to say what the girls are, but if it's Yosef and Shimon, so we'll have to say, let's say, Serach Pasashim, right? Two Serach Pasashim, let's say. Okay. Dina.
It has to be after time is Chafei.
What?
Well, that has to be after Tubav, when they were able to marry each other.
Oh, you say, yeah, I hear. We're just using it as a mushal, right? Yeah. So anyway, so that's again.
Why can I?
Yeah.
Why is this Gemara not a raya to the first sugya in Gittin? The Rabbah says, "Ba'inam l'shma," Rabbah says, "V'she'ein edim tzin l'kaimai." The Gemara's maskana is the Rabbah agrees to Rabbah, but why isn't this a raya? Rabbah is chayshish for sheyaris mitzuyas.
You mean, so why don't you say Yeah, but I don't know if
right at the beginning. We should have said Rabba agrees to Rabba.
Oh yeah. The Rishonim talk about it. That's my guess, but I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So, but anyway, so that's Shitas Rabba. How do we know that? Because if you don't say this, then we have a stira from Rabba to Rabba. The Hu Gita, 3 lines on from the bottom. The Hu Gita, the Shtakar, Peitina de Rav Huna. There was a get that they found in the Bezdin of Rav Huna. And Rashi says that his Bezdin was a busy Bezdin. So we look at his Bezdin as if it's Shiyaris Mitzuyas, meaning there's people coming and going. So the Shtakar, Peitina de Rav Huna, to have a Kosav Bey. It was written in there, Bishviri Masa da Rochis Nara. That it was written in Shviri. Masa is the town that's on Rochis Nahara, that's on the river called Rochis. Right? And that was the name of, that was the information that's on the get. Every get has to have it's a very interesting din. And I don't remember if is it a Gemara even again? Well, I don't even know what the source of this din is. That every get is supposed to be written. You're supposed to write what the closest body of water next to the town that the get is being written.
In the biography that they put out for Reb Nata, it's mentioned in there also that I think he was makbid to find one particular town, and what was the situation with the body of water there, and the body of water apparently had dried up. So, but it brings this halacha then.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to always name that, right? You have to always have a name of a body of water, right? Because body of waters don't move. L'chara, that's a good way of
describing. Yeah, also because the water can come back or something. It's something for a Moshe that the water can come back. There's a whole word over there in the book.
Okay, whatever it is. So that's what it means here. So they found this get, right? And it was written again in Shviri, which is a town that's on Rochis Nahara, on the river called Nachas. Amar Huna, on Tamabez now, Kashinan, Lishnei Shviri. We have to be chayshish that there's two towns of Shviris, right? So basically, again, it's hard to understand we're being chayshish that there's two couples, same names, married each other, same towns, right? So that's what we have to be chayshish for. And Rav Chisda told Rabba, hook ayin ba, go be my ayin into this. The Lord by me Rav Huna, because I'm telling you, Rav Huna is going to come tonight, and he is going to ask you this shaila. What's the story with this get? Is it a kosher get or not? So Rabba went out and he was medayik, and he found the Mishnah, the Tanan, Kol Ma'aser Bezdin, Avize Hareze Yaser. Right, our Gemara that we learned a blot ago, that any Ma'aser Bezdin, you give it back. You have to give it back to the lady. So you see that we're not worried about double names of cities, all that. You just give it back to the lady. So again, this is Rabba Paskening for the Bezdin of Rav Huna, which we said is considered very busy, and it's as if there were caravans coming back and forth. So Makom Shashayaras Mitzuyas Dami, but Kapashit Rabba the Yaser, and Rabba said, Rabba Paskening that you have to give it back. Why? Didn't we just say on Amud Aleph that according to Rabba, if the Shiyaras Mitzuyas, you don't give it back? Because we're assuming that there could have been two people with the same name, the man with the same name, the woman with the same name. Alma, Yosef and Shimon in, if you have a chazak, so what I mean, there has to be a way to answer up the stira. So it must be that if we have a chazaka that there's two Yosef and Shimons in the town, then we're worried, meaning in, yes, and therefore we're not going to give the get back to her. Eloi, but if there's no Yosef, two Yosef and Shimons, then Loi. So you see, it has to be, in order to answer up the stira, in Rabbah, it has to be that there's two requirements, and you have to meet both requirements. In order for Rabbah to give the get back to the woman, it needs to be two requirements. It needs to be that the shiyaras mitzuyas, and you have to have a chazaka that there's two of these people with the same names. Fine. Avad Rabba Uvda. Rabba actually did this. Right? Bahu Gita Tishtaka Bekisna de Pupadisa. There was a get that was found by the Bekusna is the flax, the place that they made flax in Pumbedisa, Kishmaitse, and he did this the way Hishmaitse, the way he let it be heard, which means that you needed two things. Right? Ikada Amri Hecha de Mizavni Kisna. Some say the get was found in the spot that they actually have the place where they sell the flax, meaning in the storefront, let's say, and they gave back the get because they couldn't find two people with the same name. Even though, since it's a place that sells flax, I guess flax is a very common thing, so people were constantly there. So even though there were people constantly there, right, we still give back the get because you need both. In order to not give back the get, you need shiaras metzuyas, and you need a chazaka that there's two people with the same name. If you don't have both, then you give back the get. That's one shot. The Taru Kisna wasn't in the place where they sold the flax, where there's a lot of people. They found the get in the back room where they soaked the flax. Bava the Husiku. And then in that case, even though in the town we knew that there were two couples with the same exact name, but the loy shricha shayaris, but since it was found in a place where caravans are not normally found, so therefore they said give back the get. So again, just to make it clear, according to Shitas Rava, in order to give the get back to the woman, all you need is one. Well, I'm not saying it really the backwards. In order to not give it back, you need to have two requirements. You need to have that there's two couples with the same name in town, which makes it that there's a chance that this get belongs to a different couple, not this particular couple. That's one. And two, there has to be people constantly traveling back and forth. If you don't have either one of those, then the get goes back to the woman so she can collect her ksuba. That's Shitas Rabbah. Reb Zera has a different way. Reb Zera, so again, this whole thing happened from a stira, from a Mishnah to a Mishnah. Reb Zera Rami Masnisan Abraisa. Reb Zera asked the kasha a stira from a Mishnah to a Braisa. Umashani, and he answered it in his own way. Tanana maybe get Vavademana. So if somebody brings a get, shliach brings a get, and it gets lost in Matzula out there kasha. If they find it immediately, it's kasha. Rim lav possible, and if not, then it's possible. Or a minute, let's get stira from a Braisa. Matzah get isha b'shuk. If you find the get of a woman in the street, is mansha bal maida. When the bal is maida that he divorced her, yafsur isha, give it back to the woman. Eina bal maida. If the bal doesn't agree, lo yafsur, lo lezever, lo lezer. Don't give it to the husband and don't give it to the wife. Right? Because if you give it to the husband, then maybe he did divorce her, and now she's not going to be able to collect on it. And you give it to her, maybe he didn't divorce me, right? So we don't. So just keep it, right? What's the stira? Katani yes, but we learned this mansha bal maida, when the bal admits that it's a good get yasal isha, you give it back to the woman vafilu lizman meruba, and it doesn't say that there's any time limit. It's even if it's after a long time. Now our Mishnah is the Mishnah in Gittin is mashma that if it's found after a long time, you don't give it back because who knows what could have transpired over that amount of time. But here you do give it. Here it seems like you're saying you do give it back. So it's a stira. One is talking about where the caravans are normally they're common, right? So Mamela, you can only give back the get if it was found right away. If it was found later, since there's constantly people traveling here, we're afraid that it's somebody else's get. And Vakim She'ein Shiaras Mitzuyas, when there's no Shiaras Mitzuyas, then you could hold on to it for a long time. Because what are the chances if there's no trains traveling into this town that there's somebody else's get with the same people's names came in? That's one shot. Ikeda Hamri, there's another shot. It's talking about where there's a chazaka that we don't give it back, right? Meaning we're muhsik, that there's no how do you call it? There's no couples with the same name. So since we know that there's no couples with the same name, so therefore you don't give it back. I'm sorry if I said it the opposite. But who shehuchsaku, it's talking about where there was muhsik, that there's two couples with the same name. Memela, don't give it back. Behind the Rabba, and that's like Rabba. That's one way. And Ikad Amri, Avagav Deloyochsaku, Loy Nedar, even though we don't have a chazaka, don't give it back. Upliga the Rabba, and it disagrees with Rabba. Fine. So again, you have two versions. You have Reb Zera asking a kasha on his own, and he's coming out with his one sheet that says like Rabba, one sheet that says like not. So now the Gemara asks, Bishlam Rabba lo Reb Zera. We understand why Rabba asked the stira. He didn't want to ask it like Reb Zera asked it. Why? Because Masnisan Alima Leilak because a Mishnah is always stronger. Mishnayos are stronger than Brises. So if he found a stira between one Mishnah and another Mishnah, he's going to ask the stira that way. Elo Reb Zera, my time but how come Reb Zera has to ask the stira from a Brisa? Why can't he ask the stira from a Mishnah? So Reb Zera will tell you, Mi katani ha amar tenu noisnin. Does that Mishnah say that if the husband says give the woman the get, you should give it? Even if it took a long time, that didn't say that. We're being medayik that in the lashon of the Mishnah, saying mashma that if you give it, so that if he says to give it, so then fine, give the get, even if it's been a long time since it was lost. Dilma ha'amar tenu noisnin. Why don't we say it diak? Maybe if he says to give it, it should be given. But only if the get was found right away, not if it was found later. Meaning you're making this whole fancy deal that says that if the husband says to give it, so then you should give it, and it's even after a long time. So who says maybe the deal to be made is if the husband says that it's to give it, so give it, and it happens right away. So the Mishnah doesn't say it beferish, so it's not a beferish stira. Okay, so what about the Brisa? So the Brisa at least says beferish when the bishop is mansha bal moida yachsel isha. So there, at least it says a beferish. So it's very interesting. Also, not something that's easy to understand because you're still saying this. You're saying that the stira is the same. Just the Brisa says it more outright than the diak in the Mishnah. So what? But the bottom line is you have the ability to make that same diak. What's the difference if one Brisa has a beferish and the Mishnah doesn't have a beferish? Elamai, but Reb Zera is saying, no, it's a stronger kasha. We'd rather take a kasha from a Brisa that says the din openly, than a Mishnah that doesn't say it openly. And Rab is saying, no, we'd rather take it from a Mishnah. A Mishnah is much stronger than a Brisa. Okay. Fine. So then the Gemara says, Lamanda Amar, the Reb Zera. So according to Lamanda Amar, that says the Reb Zera, Makom Sheshiyaras Metzuyas, like again, we had two pshatim in Reb Zera. So according to the Shita in Reb Zera that says that Reb Zera's din is that if it's a place that the get was found in a place that the caravans are constantly coming back and forth, even though we don't know that there's two people with the same name, Upliga the Rabba, and he's disagreeing with Rabba. Again, Rabba says that if you only have one or the other, you give the get back to the woman. Right? Reb Zera is saying, no, you would not give it back if you have one or the other. So, but my committee, what's pshan in this machlok? Because again, Rabba holds that if it's either we have a chazaka, you have to have both. There has to be a chazaka that there's two couples with the same exact name, and you have to have shiyaras and matzuyas. If you don't have either one of those, then you give the get back to the woman. But Reb Zera is saying, no, even if you have only one of those, you do not give the get back to the woman. So what's a pshan in the machlokes? What it says, Rabbi saw the Katani call Maisa Bezdin. It says in the Brisa, all Maisa Bezdin. Areza Yafsa, you give it back. The Shtakach to Bezdin Askina, we're talking about where you found this shtar, either a get or whatever the other shtaros were, you found it in Bezdin. Bezdin, Kimakum Shashiyaras Mitzuyas. Bezdin is a busy place, people coming and going. So that's a Makum Shashiyaras Mitzuyas. V'hu Shehusaku Loi, V'hu Shehusaku and it's talking about when there's people that have the same names, lo yachzir, don't give it back. Lo yachziku, but if you don't have a hachazaka that there's two couples with the same name, so then yachzir, so you give it back, right? Even though there's shiyaras and matziyas. So basically, Reb Zera is saying, Rab is saying that you need to have both because it's mashur that this whole thing took place in Bezdin, and there's people constantly going back and forth, and you have the chazak of the name. But Reb Zera Amar Lach, and Reb Zera is going to say Mikatani kol ma'isa bezdin shenim tu bezdin. It doesn't say in the Mishnah any ma'isa bezdin that was found in Bezdin. It says kol ma'isa bezdin yachzik katani. Anything that has a ma'isa bezdin should be given back. And it's talking about where you found the get outside the bezdin, where it doesn't necessarily mean that there's people constantly traveling back and forth, and yet you see that it still goes back. So that's pshat the machlokes Rabbah and Reb Zera. Okay, so
that doesn't include all the different items in the Mishnah. This is only something that has to do with court. A lot of the items listed in the Mishnah might be done outside of court, right? Like, a matana or, the different items that the Mishnah was talking about.
You're saying all of them. Not necessarily done in court. Yeah, we're only talking about things that are, yeah, you're 100% right.
The will that was done when someone's sick or a receipt, that's not always done in court, like all these things.
That's why lo yachzir. The Mishnah says lo yachzir.
Right, that's what he's saying.
That's fine.
Right, that's
There's only a stira in the get. The get is a stira because one place says lo yachzir, one place says yachzir. That's a ma'isa bezdin.
But it would be anything in ma'isa bezdin. There's sometimes ma'isa bezdins they rule on certain like financial cases or arrangements or certificates.
I don't think that's what that's Rashi said before on Yitzayin Vadal. I think the Maisa Bezdin is specific things that are in all cases. Davashu Tanai Bezdin, going Ksuba, Umazin Isha, Vahabanos, the things that are Tanai Bezdin that everyone has to include. It's not based on the case. Every marriage has these things. That's a nice Bezdin. But borrowing money, even though there's a shtar that's signed in Bezdin, that's not a Maisa Bezdin.
Oh, but isn't that the same thing?
All stari money are done through Bezdin? Why would that be?
Yes, but that's not considered a Maisa Bezdin, according to Rashi. Rashi says a Maisa Bezdin is specific things which are Tanai Bezdin.
Right, isn't that? I thought that's what Avi's saying.
No, so the Mishnah, our Mishnah, the steer between our Mishnah and the other one is Gittin. That's a Maisa Bezdin. The Ksuba Sheba is a Maisa Bezdin. But the rest of it's not a Maisa Bezdin. There's no stira between the rest of the Mishnah and either the other Mishnah or the Bryce. There is no stira.
Okay, but that's fine. But meaning these things that the Mishnah is talking about here the Gemara is talking about here are things that are found in.
Right, but the only one of our Mishnah that includes is get isha.
Right. Yeah. Okay, good. So those are those two shittas, Reb Zera and Rabbah. Reb Yirmiyah Amar. Reb Yirmiyah is a different shot. We're going to Ka'amri Eidim. The Bryce is talking about where Eidim said, "Me oilam lo chasamnu el al get echad shel Yosef ben Shimon." We only signed on one get in our lifetime of Yosef ben Shimon with his wife. Because again, we should have said that before. I should have said that before. That we're not only talking about a get with this, her name is the same, his name is the same, the Adam's names have to be the same. Right? So, but here we're talking about where there's one get like that, and the Adam say we testify that we only signed on one get in our lifetime for this. So Mamela, you give the get back, even if it's a long time. And that's what the Bryce is talking about. So he's saying you can differentiate between whether the Adam testify that they've never given anything from that get. Yachi might remember. So Gemara says, what is the chiddush? If you have two Adam that say we're signed on this shtar, we're the only two. These are the only couple that we ever signed on the shtar. So of course you give it back, right? So then the Gemara says, "Mao the same Well, maybe we'll find a get that has this. His name's the same, her name's the same, the Adam are the same, but they're not the same people, right? You would have thought that maybe we have to be choishish for that and not give the get back to the lady, Kamash Malon, that we're not worried about that. Okay.
But aren't the Adam being made about their signatures? Signatures are unique. Even if they're the exact same names, they sign differently. That's the whole point of a signature.
It just came up the other day, actually. I don't know what was in Megea. When you sign in a get, it's all this Ksav Ashuris. It's not your regular signature, right? I don't know.
Back in the day, that's what they wrote with. Nowadays, but first of all, the way I write in Hebrew is completely different than somebody else writing in Hebrew. If I write Ksav Ashuris, let's say I write with that, I still have to write it a certain way.
Right, the standard way.
But that's unique. Everyone has unique ways of forget about the signature. Everyone has unique ways of writing. You could pick off, if you brought in an expert and you were able to look at your signature, you can know that that's the way I write.
I don't know.
There's a whole Gemara that talks about the Rabbanim that didn't sign their names. They would sign pictures.
Yeah, but everyone writes a little bit differently. Anyone who's a writing expert could pick out people's, the way they write different than somebody else. That is what a signature is.
I don't know. I mean, Gershonu, what do you say? You're this resident cipher or Elio?
I don't know. I was tossing this up the whole way through Gittin. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's mashma from half the Gemaras one way and half the Gemaras another way. I thought for sure it's just the name that they're saying they're being Mekayim, not the handwriting. I mean, I've seen so many poor handwritings in my time. I don't know if anyone would be able to tell one from the other. And probably 70% of mezuzahs and tefillah. They're just bad writing. You can't tell which one's which. It's hard to write with a kolmus unless you're used to it. If you write chicken scroll, there is no difference between most mezuzahs.
That's chicken scratch, right? When they go chicken scratch?
It is. It's all chicken scratch. At least 70% of mezuzahs in America.
Yeah. I hear. All right, we're getting into a new kanois. Let's go move on.
It's not kanois. If you want kosher mezuzahs, you got to know what's in them.
That's true.
That's the whole movement now with the OU and Satmar, I saw.
I thought they on it again now. This was last year.
I think they had a meeting last week, I think.
Straighten out the mezuzah situation.
Yeah, there's different problems in the Hasidic world. I mean, additional problems, not just the same ones.
I hear. Okay. All right, let's do next shot. Ravashi has a fourth shot. We're going to Ka'amar, where the guy said, Nekev yeshpoik b'tzad ois ploinis. Where the guy said, where the shliach, again, the shliach who dropped the get, said, I know that there was a hole in the parchment next to this certain letter. And that's a proof that must be the get that was lost. And therefore, you can give it back. The dafka b'tzad ois ploinis. So the Gemara says it has to be, when he says it has to be next to a specific letter. But if he just says, oh, this get, I'm telling you, had a hole in it, that's not enough. Loy, that's not enough. Right? Because why? Because Ravashi, Masapkele, he's Masupik, whether Simonim, he Dairaisa Durabonim. The question is a simin a Dairaisa or a Durabonim? We're going to have this in the next paragraph, Ela Metzias. This concept of somebody showing a simin, does that work? So is that a Dairaisa Durabonim? So what's the difference? Is it Dairaisa Durabonim? Halacha is halacha. Right? But it's a big difference, because if it's Dairaisa, then it's one thing that you want to use it for financial things, meaning it's a shtar, and the guy says, I'm telling you, it's a legitimate shtar. Remember, there's a dot, there's a hole in the shtar. Fine, but if for marriage, to allow people to get divorced and remarried based on the derabbanon of a siman, that would not fly, right? And here we're talking about marriage. When we were talking about both, we're talking about finances and marriage. So if it's a siman, if the concept of siman is a daraisa, So then you could use it for both marriage and finances. But if it's the Rabbanan, you can only use it for finances. You can't use it for marriage. So that's why he said it has to be a hold next to a specific letter. Right? And the Gemara brings a story about this. Rabba Chana on Tamar Aleph now. Irkas means it got lost. Irkas like Gita Bei Midrasha. He lost the get in the Beis Medrash. Amar, he said, Isimana Isli Bigave. So he told the guy in the yeshiva who found it, right? If I have a simon with it, eat tvias aino. And if you want, even if you're not going to take my simon, you're not going to trust me for a simon. I have what's called tvias ayin, which means I recognize it. Isli Bigave. Then I have tvias ayin. So for one of those two, I'll tell you both of them and give me back the gets. So they gave it back to him because they trusted that this was a legitimate get because he was able to prove it. So he said, when he got the get back, he said, if the reason that they gave it back to me is because I gave a siman, in which case they hold that simanim is deraisa, because Savri simanim deraisa, they hold that simanim is deraisa, that's why they gave it back to me. Or maybe they held that the siman is not good enough, but since I had a tvias ayin, which means basically he says like I could tell you, what type of parchment it was or something like that. Then maybe that's why they gave it back to me. But we're going to see this also in Elam Metzias. Tvias ayin only works with the Talmud Chacham. We trust the Talmud Chacham that he says I recognize this thing. But Stama person is not trusted to say that he has a tvias ayin. Yeah. Okay. We'll stop over here. So basically, just to chaza very quickly, there was a stira for most of the daf. There was a stira in if you find a get, do you give it back to the woman or not? And we basically had four different pshatim in the stira. And the big nafkamina comes is if you give it back, if there's a shiyara passing through, and you had the same people with the same names within the town, in which case, according to Rava, then you would give it back. I'm sorry, you would not give it back. Other than that, you'd give it back. Reb Zera says even with one of them, you don't give it back. And then you had Reb Yirmiyah's pshat that you really would never give it back unless the Eidim actually say that they know that they never signed on another star. And you have Rav Ashi is talking about you only give it back where there's Himamish has a siman. All right, so those are the four things. Okay, not an easy daf, but semi-understandable as compared to the other daf.